Welcome to our special feature, ZingHR presents Purpose-Driven HR for Business Outcomation, partnered by ET Now, an engaging and comprehensive series that seeks to understand how ZingHR's Outcomation can aid people leaders to take a purpose-driven approach that intersects with corporate strategy to help boost business outcomes. The series has touched upon demystifying purpose-driven HR for business outcomation, understanding the big picture, namely the board's priorities. It has explored how HR can, in its capacity, encourage strategic thinking across all levels of the organization, build a spirit of disruption in a corporate environment, and how HR leaders have become the flag bearers for ESG adoption. Today, I welcome you to our final discussion in the series, wherein we'll do a deep dive on how HR leaders can leverage an HR toolkit to make digital transformation a success. With that, I'd like to officially welcome our panel of distinguished domain experts. We have with us author, talent management, and brand evangelist, Abhijit Bhaduri; Chief Human Resources Officer, Audio and Farm Sector, Mahindra & Mahindra, Rohit Thakur; partner at Deloitte, Digital Transformation Specialist, Govind Korikar; and founder, CEO, and Managing Director of ZingHR, Prasad Rajappan. Gentlemen, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us here in studio. And Prasad, I'd love to kick off the conversation with you. So for sake of some context setting, and for the benefit of our viewers, what are the typical obstacles or roadblocks, the pitfalls that get in the way of developing, establishing, and most importantly, sustaining a purpose-led HR function? Your thoughts?
Thanks, Pooja. Like I said early in my earlier talks, when we talk of purpose-led HR, it starts with some lot of euphoria, and people say, wow, we are going to meet this purpose, what the board needs. And each functional department heads goes and start making their initiatives. But we have seen often that as time moves away, there's lack of collaboration between teams.
Sure.
Each one is going in different direction with perceived thought that this is going to meet the purpose. And that many times are counterproductive. And after a couple of months, you see that the purpose, what the board wanted, doesn't get met. So team collaboration, functional collaborations is one area which comes big time on that. And the second one was said, people start focusing on the means rather than the purpose.
Sure.
So lot of focus is on how to achieve the purpose. And then the task goes to the means. And over a period of time, people realize there is no connection between the means and the purpose.
Well, it's fascinating that you state that, but I'd love your opinion, Abhijit, on whether you echo the same sentiment, and do you in fact view the glass as half full?
No, I think what happens is you have leadership, talent, and culture. These are the three growth drivers. And they actually have to work in tandem with each other.
All easier said than done.
Of course it is, which is why, when you're working with people, the ability to, the leader sets that vision, as Prasad said, that you're talking about purpose. What does the board want? But to achieve that purpose, you need the talent. That's the skills portfolio that you have. But once you get the skills in place, you need the culture to retain the skills in that organization to deliver the good. So it actually works all together.
And amidst all of this triangulation, right, Govind, if I could come to you, what typically goes wrong? And if you could reach deep into your own portfolio of experiences as to how you've navigated the challenge yourself.
So I think that these days technology is kind of at the center of a lot of things. So to say, every HR transformation is linked to some kind of a technology implementation or a technology initiative.
Right.
If you don't have a defined North Star, if you don't know how the technology is going to add up to the outcomes that you have envisaged, and that too happening in a time-bound manner with kind of goals that are predefined and where you celebrate more often.
Right.
That is where the success will come from. And that is where I have seen a lot of organizations not kind of, making these initial plans or investments, and hence kind of making this whole process just a tick in the box.
Sure. And Prasad did bring up an interesting point, and I'll come to you now, Rohit, about bridging that gap between the plan and its reality.
Sure.
Right? How does one go about doing so? And what are the pitfalls that one typically encounters in that process?
I think that at three levels. One, I think, is the individual himself or herself and the team. The capability of the person driving it, I think, is the epicenter or the core of what will come out of this. And many times, it may be the euphoria, it may be unpreparedness, it may be just rushing in. And I think the first thing for me is the team or the person doing it. That can be a make or a break thing.
Sure.
The second is the leader. the leader of the organization or the leader of the unit which wants this transformation. Can the leader pull himself or herself out of the weeds, get out of transactional HR,
Right.
and really think more strategic, so the team can be more a partner to the leader, or can stay as being a yes sir, yes sir, I'll do it, sir, kind of a thing. The third is the leadership team as well.
Sure.
What I've noticed in my experience is, especially when a culture is getting shaped or the organization is still in its initial formative years, if the leadership team is also short-sighted or is focused on quarter by quarter outcomes,
Right.
then elements of what could be a bigger important to cement the base for a larger transformation can be a kind of a deal breaker as well. So individual, the leader, and the leadership team at three levels.
You've really set the context beautifully. And, to do a bit of a deep dive, and I'll come back to you here, Prasad, for colleagues or contemporaries, HR leaders that may be looking to build that HR purpose-led function, right? That purpose-led HR function, rather. What are the tools, the techniques, the frameworks that have proven to be particularly effective?
Like I said earlier, like Abhijit covered culture and we spoke about celebrating the earlier wins. I think there has to be a structured methodology of doing that. And there's a structure saying what is the purpose. Like I said, Govind said, how I'm going to measure that there. Other important part with Abhijit brought also is, are we weaving in entire company into this? Are we bringing all the stakeholders? And that doesn't mean only the employees there, but having the related stakeholders part of the system. There are cases where you have to bring in the contractors, you are bringing the vendors there. And when you say, even from the employee perspective, we normally ignore a lot of people. We say, okay, workmen, one standard solution will work. Or white collar, some standard will work. So I think there has to be a framework where you're taking care of all the stakeholders. And today's case of technology, we can do hyper-personalization. My career aspirations will be different from yours
Sure.
and others. And just imagine a company with 10,000 people, how are you going to look at them? How do you align their purpose with the organization's purpose?
Right.
And that requires a very solid framework to align those maps.
Coming to you, Abhijit, when we talk about this purpose-led HR function and getting all employees across the food chain to be singing off the same sheet of music, what are the typical obstacles and what are the frameworks that essentially help one navigate those, right? The actual toolkits that have proven that they work.
Well, I have always seen that, the most important critical component of this is the line manager, so the person you are reporting to and that team that you are working in as a part of that team, that is really the crux of that transformation. Right. So, if your manager actually helps you drive that shift, and the managers actually help you build the skills to be able to do that, the managers encouraging you, you are working with that peer group, this combination is really where it hums together. And then you your manager also works as a connect with the other teams which
Right.
are doing that, and that's the way it will move up the food chain. So I think the line manager is the most critical part for any of these shifts.
Is it the line manager then, a Govind, that ensures that no employee is left behind?
So I have heard this a long time ago. People don't leave organizations, they leave managers. So I think I hope it is still true, and I see that it is still true. And this really reinforces that. Yes, it does. Right. So because for an employee, he is the immediate catalyst for change.
Right.
So that is one. Two is, a lot of organizations, depending on their level of maturity or from a people, process, technology standpoint, will have different approaches
Right.
to make those changes happen.
Yes.
And hence, it is important to understand what is the level of maturity from an organization perspective to kind of intake that change and then deliver those outcomes.
Sure. And you've touched on, transformation fatigue earlier in the conversation. You've touched on change management. So as these frameworks continue to evolve, and I'll come to you, Rohit, that also poses a challenge, of course, right? In terms of that purpose-led HR function continuing to iterate on itself, right? How do you essentially balance and manage employee expectations with those of management?
I think if I was to zoom out slightly, first is, for, in this case, the HR leader and the HR organization to understand the business. What are we going after? What are the business priorities, right? and get a holistic view of that.
Right.
And that's where, again, I think progressive organizations involve the function, at a very early stage about what they ought to be doing, what the priorities are. That's at the first level. At the second level then is anchoring this learning or this realization with both what is needed, and I think in the what, a great thing that worked for me earlier in the past is looking at design thinking. Putting the person at the center who's going to be impacted, or the process at the center, and saying how will whoever's impacted by this get excited about what happens to them. So using that methodology helps in the what. And then the how. What is the organization's culture? What are the organization's values? And with that element, how can the experience be magnified? Thirdly, I think choosing the technology partner. That's important now. Now you know the what, you know the how. Who's the partner who can now help you navigate through this? Whether simplicity, agility, scalability, diversity, can kind of come in. Because once you hard code it, to a certain extent, you want to tweak it, right? So and that's why I think identifying a good technology partner is important. And then of course there are things like especially when you are global, looking at intellectual property, looking at data privacy. Those things can become big dampeners if you go too far ahead and don't look at this. So I think if you have a holistic element like this, I think you are well set. And then you should be open to failure. Then you got to play with this.
Today's employee is spoiled for choice. All right? In spite of the global volatility that surrounds us, it's an incredibly competitive job market. So what role do HR functions, such as the ones we're discussing today, play in creating that collaborative yet competitive, enjoyable work environment? And how do they shape a company's ability to attain and retain top talent?
I just want to carry on what Abhijit was saying,
Please.
and I want to cite an example of a workman, one of our customers. I was coming from Bangalore airport, and he sees my ZingHR badge, and he says, it comes and thanks me. He's saying, thank you, because of you, my daughter got married. I said, what? He says, I work in night shift, and I had a problem that my name in my employee ID and the PF number name was different. And I could, before ZingHR or before your platform, I never knew how to do that. I used the app, applied, and within 3 days it got corrected. I got a loan for my daughter's marriage.
Phenomenal.
The point looks very trivial, but I think if technology can touch this heart and soul of those level people, be it the last level workman or be the MD of the company, I think then we are done.
Right.
But that thing, are we paranoid about doing that?
Right.
Are we we spoke about personas, and are we really worried about, are we touching the last soul in the company?
Right.
And if you can do that, and technology is just an enabler, but it starts from the intent of doing that. And quite often I've seen, we spoke about line managers, it's always said, you take care of the workmen, you take care of the top management, the middle managers are normally left out. And you expect them to do the change management.
Sure.
So if you can do that, then I think it'll be wonderful.
Well, Govind, I think nothing can quite top the anecdote that Prasad has just shared with us, but I'd love for you to share a similar example from within your organization, perhaps.
So maybe, and just taking a cue from what Prasad said, right? So, these days the experiences that employees want transcend the standard HR experiences. They don't compare my HR experience with your HR experience.
Right.
I compare my HR experience with my Uber experience.
That hyper-personalization that Prasad was talking about.
That whole, so the comparisons or where the kind of things will come from is different.
Right.
So from an experience standpoint, right? So we were doing a large program for a very large bank in India. And the idea was to put together a customer relationship management software in place. Upfront, we had told the management that it makes sense to have a change management approach and plan right up front to make sure that people adopt this new platform.
Right.
We were told that don't worry, there will be a message from the top and everyone will fall in line. But they waited, the message came, they waited for 3 months, 6 months. People did not fall in line.
Sure.
Why? Because taking a cue from our earlier conversations is because they did not see the purpose.
Right.
Why this platform is important for me? How will it make my life better? Three, and how will it protect my interests, right? Whether I am giving away too much to my organization, will that be used against me?
Right.
Those are real fears. So once people started addressing those, that is when the real transformation took off, because the adoption of the platform took off.
Right. Oh, phenomenal examples, and they're very relatable. So I'm not going to spare either of you two gentlemen either. And, you know, if we could start with you, Rohit, and then come to you, Abhijit.
Sure.
I think the traction typically happens because if the digitalization is meaningful, then I would say 3 E's. I think it elevates the conversation.
Sure.
By eliminating waste, wasted time, and enabling outcomes that are far more meaningful. So and if I look at the newer generation who aren't just looking at, hey, what is the quality of my work? It's also about the broader aspect of, let's say, sustainability, diversity, and inclusion. ESG, as we call it now, different things. So I think a good program like this can bring forward, those messages,
Sure.
which could be subtle, but weave it into the way the employee works,
Right.
which can make it quite attractive for them to come and stay in the organization.
Well, absolutely. And Abhijit, we just heard Rohit touch on ESG. And the fact of the matter is that employees today, especially millennials, care to work for organizations who share their values, right? And so to what extent does ESG now need to become a top priority for that HR function, so to speak?
I think every employee interprets the organization's values with their own lens. One of the things I just want to add that, what Rohit said about technology, it needs to be, the design and interface really matters a lot, because in our personal lives, every employee uses way more number of apps than
Right.
what we use inside an organization.
Right.
So the number of options inside the organizations are restricted. Therefore, those few really need to be absolutely, a terrific experience. The second part of it is, whatever the organization does needs to be, furthering my own career aspirations. And this is one of the pieces where the organization has an opportunity to really think about how do we provide pathways to build the skills that are needed for not just what you're doing today, how do you become way better at what you're doing today, and then how does that prepare you for opportunities which are going to be even more challenging.
Sure.
So I think this is really the combination that you are really talking about. How do you sort of build that in on a day-to-day basis?
No, absolutely. And Prasad, if I could get your view here, because technology, while of course essential, is not a one-size-fits-all formula. Right? So how do you essentially, within that toolkit, within that framework, ensure that that technology is serving its desired purpose?
Like I said earlier, technology is not the purpose. Unfortunately, a lot of people are getting fascinated by technology. They keep asking, do I have bots, do I have AI? People forget that it's just a means. And if you keep the purpose in front, for example, talent acquisition. You're using bots now, cognitive, all those things. But if the purpose is to hire in the shortest time the right person who's going to be successful,
Right.
then the means could be anything. And I think what is happening now, AI can't replace every process. But if you can use AI to eliminate, like Rohit said, to eliminate a lot of non-value added, eliminate bias, but still keep the human touch. It's very important to keep the human touch, otherwise we're all going to be in a different world. Yeah?
Well, Govind, Prasad is absolutely right. Human resources by default does require that human touch, right? And there needs to be that right blend of strategy and empathy. So what more beyond the usual suspects such as business objectives, board priorities, technology transformation does human resources really need to focus on in today's day and age?
See, I think these days people look at human resources as a bunch of resourceful humans. Like people who can stand up for them, people who can make the difference.
Right.
All along we spoke about employees, but I think it is not just about the employees. You touched upon the point of the war for talent. Right? People start experiences and making opinions about an organization even if before they get hired to an organization.
Right.
Right? Asking the same question, अच्छा बताइए आपने क्या किया है? Give me a brief overview of your experience. He will say, boss, I had 4 rounds of interview. interviews, every time the same question was asked.
Right.
Why?
Why?
Why can't you just kind of automate this, or do some repository where I can then have some meaningful conversations?
Right.
So I think that is where we are today in terms of HR, as I said, has to be a set of really resourceful humans who can work with the CFOs, the CIOs, and the CEOs to deliver on the values and the outcomes that have been envisaged by the board or the organization leadership.
Sure, absolutely. And coming to you, Abhijit, human resources, or the resourceful humans, as we've just heard it called, they of course need to have a grasp of automation, right? Upskilling, reskilling initiatives. They are the team that spearhead all of these initiatives within those four walls, right? But that's not to say that that is the end all be all. There are many other components to that effective framework and toolkit. What are they, and how do they deserve to be prioritized?
I think when you look at what organizations have been doing traditionally, it's been, we've used the term the war for talent. Now, effectively, what happens is if the skills, the half-life of a skill is so short today that it's barely 2 to 3 years.
Right.
And therefore, what happens is no matter who you hire, you have to invest in developing them. So the war for talent today is going to get replaced by the war for skilling.
Right.
How do you make sure that you provide the skills which provide the pathways for me to develop and grow?
Right.
So I think addressing those aspirations of every individual across different experience levels, I think that's the real challenge that HR needs to sort of look at, because how do you create something which is meaningful to me at this stage in my life? Because career is effectively your journey through life. So as my life experiences sort of evolve, how do I evolve in that and find it meaningful at every stage?
Right.
It's not just through money, that matters, because people want it all.
Right.
They want skills, they want money, they want the perks, they want great peers, they want a brand of the organization, they want to grow their own personal brand. It's
Right.
all of that. So
Right.
organizations have to start thinking about all of that. How do you allow the individual to grow their personal brand? We have never let that happen. We kind of think that the organization's brand is your brand.
Right.
But the individuals today really want their own individual identity.
Excellent point. And with that, I'll come to you, Rohit. How does one ensure that that purpose-led function, that purpose-led HR function, is still about the people?
People in the sense of moments that matter. A person joins from college. As the person comes in, there's a certain priorities that the person has at the point of time. A person gets married. Certain priorities happen then. A person has aging parents to take care of that. A person has a child to take care of that. I think there are different elements around what HR or purpose-driven organization can build around the moment that matters to that individual.
Sure.
And I think technology can be a huge enabler, especially in a scalable organization or a global organization, to, I think, get those pivots in about when I need to, tweak or initiate, a certain feeling
Right.
or a certain impulse to help the person realize that yes, the company cares for me at this stage. And that's why my policies, my processes, the way I engage, the point that Prasad made about eventually technology is a means to an end.
Right.
The goal is motivated employees. The goal is a responsible business. And that's where I think the point of, let's say, ESG that we were talking about, it comes in there. But if I grow, how do I ensure that the environment around me
Right.
is also taken care of? So I think there are bigger elements to a company's profit or a company's growth, and I think technology can be a great enabler for that. But what a human being actually receives, should never be forgotten, and that's why the interpersonal element will always, be so important.
Just want to add something, Pooja, here.
Please.
We have been all focusing upon giving to the so-called employee or contractor. What we realized in a couple of our experiments, allow them to give.
I see.
And we see as human being, like I said, if somebody gives you something, you're happy.
Right.
But how do you feel if you are able to give someone
Even better.
better? And then we are missing that fundamental thing. We think, no, you'll have to pamper someone.
Right.
I think we have seen where we have made rewards recognition where the employee can give a badge to the manager
Right.
or a vice president. And they take that photograph and show the family that I rewarded my manager. I think so sometimes, like Abhijit was saying, we'll have to touch that human heart and saying, what do they need?
Yes.
Not what they want. We're all focusing on what they want because that is written down in the book. But what they need, if technology can touch what they need, and then there we are done.
Well, gentlemen, I have to thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. You are, in your own individual professional capacities, changing the rule book. We congratulate you for that. We applaud you for that. Thank you, and we wish you all the continued success.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thanks a lot.
With that, our special series, ZingHR presents Purpose-Driven HR for Business Outcommission, partnered by ET Now, comes to a close. We trust you found the insights shared of value. Thanks for watching.